Welcome to the 24-25 proposed budget presentation. This is not the final budget. This is to adhere to the compliance of the Act 1 timeline. The proposed final budget has to be passed by May 31st. The proposed budget and all the related documents will be on the website and available for public inspection at the Administration Building until the June 26th adoption of the final budget. We're still working on staffing. All salaries have been rolled over based on actual agreements for the groups that we have contracts, except the EASPA and Confidential Employees Group. The teacher bid meeting was held on May 13th. For the final budget, we will adjust the staff to the proper budget codes based on the bid and evaluate all open positions and budget for all open positions. We will continue to go through the budget line by line to look for variances and any potential savings. And for state revenues, projected based on history with a slight increase, we've budgeted approximately 50% of the proposed increase that is in the governor's proposal. For the 24-25 school year, these are some of the factors that have affected the amounts in the budget. The rates for the employees' insurance are all increasing, with medical at 9%, dental at 5%, and vision at 3%. The PSERS rate is decreasing slightly from 34% to 33.9%, but the total PSERS cost will increase due to the increases in salaries. The salaries for the district increase anywhere from 2.5% to 3.5%, depending on which employment contract that we're looking at. And I've included a contingency of $200,000. This is to cover costs for the remainder of the ESSER funding that's not specifically budgeted in certain department areas, and then other unexpected costs. So first I want to discuss the Career and Technical Center budget. This has a direct effect on the school district's budget. The CT's budget for 23-24 school year was $4,498,071. The proposed budget for next year is $4,570,099. The difference of $72,028. The CTC does receive state subsidy and Carl Perkins revenue, as well as some other small grants and local collections, such as the Culinary Arts Program for lunch and cosmetology program. However, the school district has to fund the tuition cost for the remainder of the CTC. So this is a cost that is billed as tuition to the school district, and that budgeted cost for next year is $3,042,383. So this is the proposed budget that you'll see in the motion to be approved on Wednesday. Now to discuss the school district's proposed budget. So this here is a breakdown comparing the 23-24 budget with the 24-25 proposed budget. The increase in revenue is just under $2.7 million, which is a 3.29% increase. This is due to significant increases that the district received in basic education subsidy of approximately $1.2 million in the 2023-24, the current school year. We had not anticipated and we had not budgeted that much of an increase, so the big difference between these is due to that difference plus then budgeting a slight increase for this year in that subsidy. So we are looking at the end of the train of thought here. The expenses, well, it's additional for revenue. We are looking at this at the end of receiving our ARP ESSER grant funding. All of these funds must be spent by September of 24. Therefore, additional revenue that we have received over the past 3 years is coming to an end. The increase in expenditures is just over 3%. With the inflation, the cost of supplies and utilities have risen greatly, while However, this is a small portion of our total budget. 64% of the budget is salaries and benefits, and these rates are bound by contracts. We have just over 3% increases in both revenue and expenditures. However, this is still a deficit budget as it was for the 23-24 school year. I'll now go through more details of the budget and funding. For the revenue portion of the budget, this chart shows the 71% of the revenue comes from the state and 3% from the federal, with 26% coming from local government. That's primarily made up of real estate taxes and earned income tax. Connellsville School District relies heavily on state revenue for our budget. However, the state wants local school districts and local governments to increase their taxes to show their local share effort. The local share effort is part of the state subsidy calculation. Last year, I did a presentation explaining the calculation of the new state subsidy and part of that calculation is the school district's local share. So I just wanted to reiterate that, remind you that that is part of our state subsidy, and we do need to show local effort in taxes. So one piece of our revenue is the money that the district receives from the state gambling. And this comes to the homeowners and through the school district from the homestead farmstead reduction. So this year we are receiving an additional $337,070, but this does not mean the district is receiving more revenue because this money is distributed back to the taxpayers that qualify for the homestead tax reduction. Next year, 9,218 homeowners will receive an additional $39.67 in reduction of their taxes. This amount in '23 was $201.22, and for 2024 it'll be $240.89. And talking with other business managers and discussing, this is the year if you want to look at the tax increase, most business managers are saying this is a good year to look at that because it's less of an effect on the taxpayers who receive that homestead reduction. So this slide shows the maximum allowable to increase taxes. The adjusted Act 1 index for Connellsville is 7.6%. This is calculated as 1.1467 mils that you are allowed to increase the taxes by. This would change the millage rate from 15.0887 to 16.2354, which would generate approximately $1.1 million at the 90% tax collection rate. So this I've demonstrated shows the effects of the property if you were to increase taxes for these homeowners. A $50,000 assessed home would see an increase of $57.34 before the homestead. But with the additional homestead reduction, it would only be an additional $17.67 for the year, which equates to $1.47 per month or 34 cents per week. The next column I have, a $100,000 assessed home would pay an additional $75 per week with that additional reduction, which equates to $6.25 per month or $1.44 per week. And those are two other examples there in the chart. And the county gives us what the median household in Fayette County is, and that would be 61,430 is the median property. And so that somebody with that value of a house would have an additional pay an additional $30.77, which would equate to a monthly cost of $2.56. So this shows a 10-year history of the tax rates for the district in Fayette County. The current year, the 23-24, we are the lowest tax millage in the county at 15.087887. The county average with the other school districts is 18.8511. So if you were to approve, of course, it's not until the June meeting that you would make that decision, but if you were to approve a tax increase to the Act 1 index, this would increase the tax rate to 16.2354. At this point, we would be the second lowest school district if Albert Gallatin does not raise their taxes. At the IU Business Managers meeting this month, the question was asked of board members, who's looking at proposing tax increases, and it was unanimous yes. Most of the business managers are proposing a tax increase. So if other school districts increase taxes, I feel that we would still be the lowest in our county. So this is the same breakdown I had earlier in the presentation. However, this is showing that if we did have that tax increase, that if you look at the difference in the 24-25, it would show that we would still have a deficit budget of just over $1.6 million. So now to discuss the expenditure side of the budget. Proposed budget, I have $87,197,731, of which 64% of that budget is tied up in personnel, at $55.7 million in salaries and benefits. Purchase services includes transportation, tuition, and charter schools, and that makes up 23% of the budget at just $20 million. Supplies and equipment is only 4% of our budget at just under $3 million, and debt payments is $7.7 million, or 9% of the budget. So this slide shows a comparison between the 2 years with dollar amounts and percentage changes within the object groups. And so if you look, the first line is personnel, so that's your salaries. And so there is an increase of 5.26%. When budgeting the 23-24 school year, we were in the midst of negotiating several employment contracts. Some of those employment contracts came in at a higher percentage than what we had budgeted in 23-24. So with that difference, and then also budgeting the actual contract amounts for 24-25, that is showing why it's a 5.26% increase, when between 2 years, most of the salaries are going up 3%, but the budget wasn't as accurate with 23-24 because those contracts were not finished being negotiated. So then the benefits are increasing by 8.59%. Medical alone is increasing 9%. And then with the rise of both Social Security and retirement due to the increase, that's based on a percentage of salaries. So when salaries increase, retirement, the employer share of retirement and Social Security will also increase. So that explains why that's going up 8.59%. There are significant decreases you can see in the purchase property service, supplies, and other objects. This is primarily due to we spent significantly in those areas with some of the COVID money and some of the grants, and those expenditures will not continue into the 24-25 school year. So that's why those are significant decreases in those areas. So there's many mandated costs that we have with us being a school district. One is PSERS. Every school district has to pay their percentage of PSERS. So this is a long history showing over time from the 10-11 school years through the current school year how it is increased, but it's starting to level off. It is slightly decreasing from 34% to 33.9% for 24-25. However, PSERS is projecting slight increases over the next several years. But this amount that we pay, the amount of our budget is $11 million as our portion of PSERS that we pay. Another large mandated cost is our special education cost. These continue to increase steadily, and this amount is just over $15 million. So, you know, we have to look for places to cut, or places to save, cost savings. So with looking at a deficit budget, I know that tax increases alone is never going to make up going to balance our budget. Therefore, cost savings that we need as a district, we need to look at now and in the future. The administration is still looking at each department budget for potential savings. But as you've seen in the presentation, that staffing plays a large role when looking at the budget costs. The first item I've listed here is to analyze special education support personnel. There are meetings scheduled to discuss this group of personnel. Mr. Evans is going to go into an in-depth analysis on special education transportation and other transportation over the start of the summer to plan for the next year. And we will also meet with the special education department to discuss any potential changes with outside placements. We could investigate an alternative energy source. There is a lot of grant money for these types of alternative energy. Maybe if the board approves the grant writer that we have on the agenda for this week, maybe some of these funds could be obtained to make a difference, make the district more cost effective. And the most difficult of these considerations is the elimination or consolidation of academic offerings and programs. This is not something that can happen for the next school year. However, this topic will need to come up over the course of this next year for the future. We need to spend responsibly and make decisions that are best for all students. These are going to be difficult decisions down the road if the state does not significantly increase funding for schools. So while trying to balance the operating budget for the school district, there are always items that are larger capital costs that we need to keep in mind as well. So this is just a small part of an ever-changing and growing list of future costs that we need to keep in mind. Renovating Dunbar Township Elementary School, replacement of roofs at the current administration office and the Springfield Township Elementary School, HVAC at the administration office, several utility vans with the maintenance department, with aging vans, they will need replaced over time. New lighting at the stadium, middle school replacement of windows and repair to their roof, and bell system at Holskin Elementary School. So if the board votes to increase taxes, I would like to designate a portion of that amount to be paid to the capital reserve account. We need to continue to grow this account for future capital projects. All right, so to finalize the presentation, this is a summary of where we are and where we may be if some changes aren't made. We may have had a total fund balance of $22.5 million with the audit of the 22-23 school year. But if you look at that year, we had not received the $5.7 million of COVID money, we would have been $2.6 million to the negative that year instead of the $3 million to the positive that we were. If not for COVID money, we would not have had that result. The current year has a deficit budget of $2.5 million, and this budget has $4.7 million in COVID money. So hopefully, it was a deficit, but hopefully we end up better off than what we budgeted, but that's to be determined. I've projected, okay, I'm sorry. If both of these years go as budgeted, okay, so then I've entered the budget for the 24-25 school year. Without a tax increase, showing a $2.6 million deficit. If both of these years go as budgeted at the end of the 25 year, the fund balance would go down to approximately $17 million. It's hard to see on the screen. I've then projected the next two school years with no tax increase and no significant increase from state or federal funding, and an average of 3% on expenditures. with these projections, we will have depleted the fund balance to $7.8 million. So basically, COVID money has prolonged the coming deficit of the Collinsville School District has had for several years. It has helped grow our fund balance, but we need to make changes so that we don't deplete it. As seen in these projections, by the end of the 26-27 school year, $14.6 million of the fund balance may be gone. The administrative staff tries to look for savings every year and recommends these savings to the school board. There are several mandated costs and contractual costs that can't be adjusted unless we cut services. We need to work together as a board and administration to figure out what changes can be made to make sure that the fund balance is not nearly depleted in 3 years. So this is that same spreadsheet, but I included it as with the tax increase. So that would show that the fund balance, while still decreasing, is at a slightly slower pace. And at the end of the 26-27 school year, we'd have $10.8 million left in the fund balance as a projection. So myself and the Finance Committee is proposing a tax millage increase to help balance the 24-25 budget. However, raising taxes is only one piece of this puzzle. We need to look at how to both increase revenue and decrease spending. The Finance Committee will meet again in June to discuss any potential changes. As a reminder, the budget amount that you approve is the amount for the expenditure budget. The difference will be budgeted to pull from the fund balance. I want to thank you for your time and ask that you approve the proposed budget on Wednesday, and we will continue to make adjustments over the next month before the final budget will need approved at the June 26th board meeting.
Next, we'll move to public comment for agenda items. First, we have Jonathan Barlow, Ford Business Ford Office Technology. Just a reminder, everybody have 3-minute time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Jonathan Barlow, Ford Office Technologies. First of all, I know how it is to serve on the board, so hats off to the board members here, taking time away from your family, making some of these tough decisions that need to be made. You're running an organization that's an $85 million company, essentially, and you don't get paid for the time that you're doing and putting it out there, so hats off to you. I'm not here to shout, scream, or get loud. I'm here to ask for your consideration. The agenda item I'll talk about is 22C regarding the copiers and printers, RFP. We've been blessed to work with the school district for over 12 years now, and I think we've made some remarkable strides, as a local company. In a world where small business seems to be, a thing of the past and gone by the wayside, we're competing against the Amazons of the world, these faceless companies that are trying to squeeze every penny out of our communities as possible. I like to think that this community is a little bit different, and that we kind of rally behind our own and support the people that help grow our community. I want you to consider three things, when you're looking at those proposals and what we do as a small business to make sure that, we're giving back. What we do, two more serious, one a little bit kind of fun. We provide jobs with that money. So when you give us a contract, we're not just, shipping it out and sending labor somewhere else. You're going to get to know the people that work there. When there is a problem, we are local. To the money, it allows us to pay our taxes to the district. It allows us to continue to flourish. It allows our people to buy homes in the area and make an investment. Furthermore, on the monetary side, it allows us to donate. We're involved in countless things here at the district through the Challenge program, through scoreboard sponsorships, through the sporting clay donations that we give. And three, like I said before, we're local people. You'll probably see us out at dinner one time. Gladly buy you a beverage or share dinner with you and share our experiences of what we've done to grow our company. So that's all I really had to say. I just want to thank you in advance for your consideration. We're the local company in this, and you have the faces behind it right here to be able to give you our full support. So thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move to nothing else. We'll move to athletics. Mrs. Sangston.
Thank you, Mr. Mansell. Request approval to award bids for fall sports supplies and equipment to the lowest responsible bidder meeting specifications. Questions or objections? I would like that on the agenda.
Hearing none, will be added.
Missouri School District, in collaboration with Consort Creation, will be offering summer volleyball and tennis programs. No questions or objections? I would like that on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be added.
That's all I have, Mr. Ransom. Mr. Ransom. Mr. Martinez. Mr. Adams. Nothing else. That's all we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sangston. Moving to buildings and grounds, Mr. Detweiler.
Thank you, Mr. Panzella. I'd like to request approval of the following event and building usage trip requests. With no questions or objections, I'd like to have items 1 through 5 spread on the agenda for Wednesday.
Hearing none, they'll be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to purchase a Ferris 72-inch zero-turn mower from Pro Power Equipment in the amount of $17,500. With no questions or objections, I'd like to have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval for the proposal to install a new Rollin hybrid TCU bell system in the middle school from Open Systems in the amount of $50,672 as per Peplum state contract pricing. This purchase is pending review of the insurance company for coverage, pending solicitor review, subject to the Connellsville Area School District's standard terms and conditions for the purchase of goods and services. And with no questions or objections, I'd like to have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, they'll be placed on the agenda.
I'd like to request approval of the following summer custodial workers. With no questions or objections, have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, they'll be placed on the agenda.
And I'd also like to request to hire a 4-hour custodian. With no questions or objections, I'd like to have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Mr. Kokenauer, anything? Ms. Sangston?
Nothing. Thank you.
Mr. Kirsch? That's all we have, Mr. Panzella. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Detweiler. Moving to the Carnegie Free Library, Mrs. Driscoll.
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Driscoll. Moving to the Collinsville Area Career and Technical Center, Mr. Kokenauer.
Thank you, Mr. Panzella. We have nothing at this moment. Mr. Detweiler.
Nothing, thank you.
Ms. Langston.
Nothing. Thank you.
That's all we have, Mr. Panzella. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kokenauer. Moving to curriculum, Mr. Martucci.
Thank you, Mr. Panzella. Request approval of the following professional employee travel. I'd like to spread 1 through 3 as proposed. No question or objection. I'd like that placed on Wednesday's agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to renew the agreement with 3P Learning for math seeds and reading aids at a cost of $17,917.60. Pending solicitor review, subject to the Connellsville Area School District's standard terms and conditions for the purchase of goods and services. With no questions or objections, I'll make that placed on Wednesday's agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval for Savvis and Vision Professional Development for the high school math department at a cost of $7,300 as proposed. With no questions or objections, I'd like that placed on Wednesday's agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to purchase elementary summer school materials from Scholastic Education Solutions as proposed. Pending solicitor review, subject to the Collins Area School District's standard terms and conditions for the purchase of goods and services. No questions or objections, I'd like that placed on Wednesday's agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the purchase of Campbell Biology and Focus from Savis at a cost of $5,793.90 as proposed. Pending solicitor review, subject to the Collins Area School District's standard terms and conditions for the purchase of goods and services. No questions or objections, I'd like that placed on Wednesday's agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of dispose of obsolete curricular materials as listed per policy number 706.1. And the Harcourt Science, Harcourt School Publishers 2000, with no questions or objections, I'd like that placed on Wednesday's agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the purchase of rewards materials from Voyager Sports at a cost not to exceed $50,600 from ARP ESSER funds, pending solicitor review, subject to the Collinsville Area School District's standard terms and conditions for the purchase of goods and services, and with no questions or objections, I'd like to place on Wednesday's agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda. Question?
Where is this money coming from? Is this ESSER money or title money, general budget?
For the rewards materials, it's our money.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Request approval to renew the 3-year agreement with Edmonton at a cost of $58,508 per year. Pending solicitor review, subject to Collins Area School District's standard terms and conditions for the purchase of goods and services. With no questions or objections, I'd like that placed on Wednesday's agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
That's all I have.
Mr. Harshman, it does say our ESSER funds right on
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bedwell.
it. I didn't notice it.
I have nothing, sir, thank you.
Mr. Renzi.
No, sir.
Dr. Kins. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Manzel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martucci. Moving to cyber, Mr. Martret.
Thank you, Mr. Panzello. We have nothing for the agenda this month. Mrs. Driscoll, you have anything additional? Mr. Harshman?
Nothing.
Mr. Gomes?
Nothing,
That's what we have.
Thank you, Mr. Martret. Moving to federal programs, Mr. Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Panzello. I have nothing. Mr. Renzi?
I have nothing.
Mr. Martucci? No, sir. Dr. Kins?
I have nothing, thank you.
We have nothing, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harshman. Moving to finance, Mr. Renzi.
I have a lot, Mr. Panzello, thank you. Request approval of the attached requisition orders and to authorize district business office to process all orders and payments. No questions or objections, I have placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the following donations to the CAHS Bible Club, the CAHS Prom Committee, CACTC Heavy Equipment Operators, CACT Cosmetology, CAHS Musical. No questions or objections, I have placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
So I forgot one. And also to the Falcon Foundation for the Digital Wall of Fame. The agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Approval to apply for a grant to authorize the board president, board secretary, and/or interim superintendent to sign any application for related documents and to adopt a resolution consistent herewith, which resolution is incorporated herein by reference. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the lease agreement between Intermediate Unit 1 and the Collinsville Area School District for Early Intervention Program effective July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025 at a cost of $18,000 at 12 equal installments of $1,500, including $600 per month for cleaning. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the resolution for the 2024-2025 proposed final budget in the amount of $87,197,731 for the Collinsville area school district and $4,570,099 for the Collinsville area career and technical center. No questions or objections, I'll now place it on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Resolution authorizing proposed final budget display and advertising. Resolved by the Board of School Directors of the Collinsville area school district as follows. The proposed final budget of the school district and career technical center for the 2024-2025 fiscal year on Form BDE 2028 as presented to the school board shall be considered the proposed final budget of the school district for the 2024-2025 fiscal year and shall be made available for public inspection after this date. And number 2, at least 10 days before the final schedule for adoption of the final budget, the Secretary shall advertise the final budget notice in substantially the form as presented to the school board. The notice shall be advertised once in a newspaper of general circulation and shall be posted conspicuously at the school district offices. No questions or objections, like I placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Okay. Okay. Point of clarification, I divided those, that was all one, that was 15F, the proposed final budget. Request approval of the errors and omissions insurance participation agreement for the PSBA Insurance Trust School Leaders Legal Liability Risk Management Program for $40,481, property casualty for $242,781, auto for $16,667, law enforcement for professional for $7,219, and excess liability $12,167, with the broker of record being DeFurio Monzel Associates for the fiscal year 2024-2025. This includes coverage for the Collinsville area school district and the Collinsville area career and technical center. No questions or objections, like I placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the workers' compensation insurance policy from UPMC Health Benefits for $165,933 with the broker of record begin Arthur J. Gallagher and Company for the 2024-2025 school year. This includes coverage for the Collinsville area school district and the Collinsville area career and technical center. No questions or objections, like I've placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the cyber liability insurance for $19,025 with the broker of record being Gallagher Insurance for the fiscal year 2024-2025. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda, please.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
And we had a finance committee meeting held on Monday, May 13th, 2024. Anything, Mr. Detweiler?
No, sir.
Mr. Kokenar? Mrs. Robinson? Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Robinson. Appreciate it. That's all I have, Mr. Manzella.
Thank you, Mr. Renzi. Moving to food service, Mrs. Sankey.
Request a conditional approval contingent upon successful submission of screening and background checks following additions to the cafeteria substitute for the 23-24 school year. Questions or objections, I would like that on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
That's all I have, Mr. Mortray.
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Kokenar. Mr. Kokenar. All right, thank you, that's all we have.
Thank you, Mrs. Sankey. Moving to personnel and review and liaison, Mr. Renzi.
Thank you, Mr. Manzella. Request approval for a permanent contract with the following professional employee based on completion of 3 years satisfactory service with the Collinsville Area School District. No questions or objections, I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, it will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval for A, to take a leave of absence effective March 4th, 2024 until on or about March 8th, 2024. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, it will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to accept the resignation of the monitor effective May 29th, 2024. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, it will be placed on the agenda.
The following sabbatical leaves are confirmed by the board. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, it will be placed on the agenda.
And the following family and medical leave act leaves are confirmed by the board. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Mr. Detweiler.
I have nothing additional.
Mr. Martucci.
No, sir.
Mrs. Coconut. And Mr. Evans. That's all I have, Mr. Manzella.
Thank you, Mr. Renzi. Moving to policy legislative, Mr. Martre.
Thank you, Mr. Penzel. We have nothing for the agenda this month. Mrs. Driscoll, you have anything additional? Mr. Harshman?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Evans?
Nothing, thank you.
So we have.
Thank you, Mr. Martre. Moving to safety and security, Mr. Martucci.
Thank you, Mr. Manzella. We have no agenda items at this time. Mrs. Driscoll? Mrs. Sexton? Mr. Bartlett? Nothing, thank you. That's all we have now. Thank you, Mr. Manzella.
Thank you, Mr. Martucci. Moving to special education, Mr. Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Panzella. Item 20A, Marquee, requesting an agreement between Marquee, Pennsylvania and the Collinsville Area School District to provide education services at a daily rate of $230.60, an increase of, increase of $6.72. No questions or objections, I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Item 20B, ESY schedule adjustment. Request approval to amend the schedule for 2024 extended school year as proposed. No questions or objections, I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
That's all I have, Ms. Driscoll. Mr. Martre.
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. D'Amico. That's we all, Mr. Manzo, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harshman. Moving to student services, Mrs. Driscoll.
ProCare Therapy. Request the agreement between Collinsville Area School District and ProCare Therapy for extended school year at a cost of $75 per hour as proposed, pending solicitor review, subject to the Collinsville Area School District standard terms and conditions for the purchase of goods and services. No questions or comments. I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
21B, Renaissance Fundamentals. Request approval of a one-year agreement for the Renaissance Fundamentals at a cost of $6 to be paid from the ARP ESSER funds, pending solicitor review, subject to the Collinsville Area School District standard terms and conditions for the purchase of goods and services. No questions or comments? I'd like to have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
21C, travel in accordance with policy number 121. Request the approval of the following travel, and I'd like to just incorporate 1 and 2 together. If there are no questions or comments, we'd like that put on the agenda also.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
21D, driver's education vehicle. Request approval of the 2024 driver education vehicle lease agreement between the Collinsville Area School District and T.A. Nelson Bus Lines at a cost of $700 per month effective June 2024 through August of 2024. Having no questions or comments, I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
And 21E, education services. Request approval of the agreement between Intermediate Unit 1 and the Collinsville Area School District for educational services beginning July 1 of 2024 through June 30, 2025. Having no questions or comments, we'd like that placed on the agenda also.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
21F, student accident insurance. Request approval of the K through 12 voluntary student accident insurance through the United States Fire Insurance Company for the 2024-2025 school year. No questions or comments. We'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
And 21G, photography contracts. Request approval of a one-year extension for the current photography contracts for KB Photos, Film and Imaging, and Furnace Hill Photography. Having no questions or comments, we'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, it will be placed on the agenda.
And that's all I have. Mrs. Sangston?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Kirkendall? Mr. D'Amico? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Driscoll. Moving to technology, Mr. Detwiler.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to request approval to purchase 45 monitors and 8 laptops from Gov Connection at a cost of $18,797 to be paid for from the technology equipment budget. With no questions or objections, I'd like to have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to purchase Google Workspace for Education Plus at a cost of $4.24 per student per year to be paid for from the ESSER funds. And with no questions or objections, I'd like to have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the 5-year copier lease maintenance agreement between Collinsville Area School District as proposed. And with no questions or objections, I'd like to have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Mr. Mortrey? Mr. Harshman?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Ghost? Nothing else, thank you. That's all we have, Mr. Panzella. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Detwiler. Moving to transportation, Mr. Kokenauer.
Thank you, Mr. Panzella. Request approval of the following updates and additions to the bus van drivers list. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, it will be placed on the agenda.
The transportation meeting was held Wednesday, May 8, 2024. That's all I have, Mr. Panzella. Mr. Martuzzi.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Renzi. Mr. Evans. That's all we have, Mr. Panzella. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kokenauer. We have nothing for non-agenda items. Assistant to Superintendent.
We'd like to let the board know that our music workshops were a big hit, and we had over 125 students participate, and it was great. I stopped out Friday at Wolfskin, and we were just so excited. So I just wanted to relay that information.
It's very good. Mr. Evans? Thank you. Motion to adjourn.